Kelly and I are so happy to welcome back Jeff Bradshaw from Camp Winona to the Camp Owners Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about reorganizing leadership responsibilities and structure at our camps. How much has the last 2 years influenced re-examining the way we do things and how we put the best people in the best spots to deliver the camp experience? Welcome to the Camp Owners Podcast. Welcome to the Camp Owners Podcast, a space for camp owners to talk about the unique aspects of camp ownership and get inspired by each other. We're going to sit down with camp industry experts, leaders, and fellow camp owners to hear how the camp dream transpired for them, learn from each other, and discuss some of the biggest issues in the private camp industry. Hello again, friends. My name is Howie Grossinger, and I am the co-owner and director of Camp Robin Hood, a day camp in the suburbs of Toronto.
Hello, everyone. I am Kelly Shuna. Executive Director is my new title, and co-owner of Hidden Pines Ranch Day Camp in Stillwater, Minnesota. If you are looking to find and subscribe to the Camp Owners Podcast, you can either find us online at gocamp.pro/ownerspod or by searching for us in your favorite podcast app. Finally, if you're listening to this and think it would be useful for other camp owners or aspiring camp owners in your circle, please feel free to send them a note to listen.
Hi, Kelly. It's great to be back. And we had a wonderful crossover episode last time around with our friends at the Day Camp Pod. And we look forward to resuming the usual track of episodes we have going here in season 3. But it could not happen if it wasn't for our friends who sponsor our program. And we'd like to give our initial shout out to the OG sponsor, Camp Brain. Our friends at Camp Brain have been doing what they do best since 1994 with 45 plus dedicated staff to meet your every need. Camp Brain works with over 1,400 camps. And here's what Jeff Cheely, owner of Cheely Camp, says about Camp Brain. We have worked with Camp Brain since 2005. We love the service and response from the support team. They are always available to help and customize the reports to work for our unique demands. And I definitely echo Jeff's sentiment there. As many of you know, my camps have been loyal Camp Brain users for a very long time, but their team is so well suited to meet your individual needs as it relates to reporting and support. And we definitely encourage all of our listeners, if you're looking for some management software, you don't have to look much further than Camp Brain. Their team is ready to speak to you. Give them a call at 866-485-8885. Check them out at campbrain.com. And once again, thanks to Camp Brain. Kelly, we've got a good one today, and I know you're really eager to, we've been doing this for a while now. We're in the return guest category, which is pretty amazing.
I know, and a Camp Brain connection. So look at that, we have just families here, camp connections. I love it. Yes, a return guest is very exciting. Today, Howie, we have Jeff Bradshaw from Camp Winona. And we were inspired to have Jeff join us because, as we have both mentioned, Howie and I are really putting some intentional thought and planning into our leadership structures and going through reorganizations, both of us. And we did do the crossover episode, which Howie mentioned, with the Day Camp Pod as kind of a springboard for diving further into this topic. So we're hoping that this will be a great conversation for other camp directors, camp owners, if they're looking to do the same as we are. So Jeff, thank you so much for coming back. Welcome back. You might be one of our first second gen guests here. So welcome. We're happy to have you.
It's great to be back. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Howie. Looking forward to it.
And Jeff, you are, because I was on your website this morning, you are the founder and executive director of Camp Winona. Am I getting that right?
You are correct. Yeah, my title for a few years has been executive director, and though we're still trying to figure out what exactly that means. So we've now got a better plan moving forward around what that title means and what the responsibilities will look like.
All right. Well, talk to us about that better plan, Jeff. Tell us about, tell us about what you've recently done.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, obviously, the past few years have been mind-numbing for all of us. We did operate in 2021. We steeled ourselves and made sure we were organized and ready to do it. It was everything under the sun. It was exhausting. It was immensely gratifying. We feel like we were fortunate to operate. We had a ton of support from so many different sources. So we felt great about the season. But we also felt we needed to take a big, deep breath and look at how to move forward. And so what we've done is we've really taken a step back and looked at our whole operating structure, looked at our core management group that support camp throughout the year. And also, I think importantly as well, looked at leadership during the season. So to start with, we've done every 2 or 3 years, we take a few days, usually in the fall, and we'll do a management retreat. We'll get away for a couple of days and just take a big deep breath and kind of debrief the season and really look ahead. This year, we finished and closed camp on a Friday in October. The next week, immediately, we came back to work and we had 2 full days of a management retreat. Both were exhausted. It was in some ways the worst time to do it. But at the same time, we caught people at the end of the season when they were just tired, also really reflective of what had just happened. It was fresh. It was they could feel it, and still it was very much a part of what they were thinking and feeling each and every day. So we took a couple of days and we really focused on our 4 key year-round staff. In our case, we call them senior directors. So what we set up was a structure of having 4 senior directors with 4 very distinct responsibilities in our operation. So the 4 senior directors for us, and again, we're a camp of 350 campers at once. We have about 125 to 150 staff during the season. And then we do operate summer camp for actually 9 weeks. We have a tag-on weekend this summer that we partner with the Hospital for Sick Kids in Toronto to operate our national transplant camp in Canada. And then we also have usually, and hopefully we get back to, really robust outdoor education in spring and fall. So for us, we open mid-April, and then we close and kind of wrap up throughout October. So we're a good 6.5 month season. Anyway, we have 4 key staff that oversee everything we do, including the summer and the outdoor side of things. What we set up was a senior director of what we call logistics. That person's responsibility is the administration, it's the registration, it's the oversight of everything in terms of intake of campers and also staff. It's the staff application process in terms of the logistics of that, the admin of that, and it's other things like social media. I'm going to give really broad strokes. So that's logistics. The second one is a senior director of experience. What happens on the ground with our campers and with our staff, and what's required in the lead up. So our senior director of experience deals almost exclusively with our parents. The questions for new families, the questions for returning families, they're the direct oversight and connection with our health services, with our camp doctor and all of our nursing team. And so they deal with the campers, they deal with the staff. So they're the one that has the lead role on the selection, recruitment, interviewing, all the rest with our staff team, and obviously the training, orientation, and then the leadership on site. So senior director logistics, senior director experience. The third one is a senior director of what we call operations. And for us, in an overnight camp setting, it's food service, it's property being the 2 big pieces. And then also this individual looks after primarily all of the larger capital development, the site expansion, everything we're doing throughout the year to kind of get ready for the next season. So they really work closely with our food service team, our executive chef, and also with our property team, our property director. And then the fourth one, which we've added this year, we kind of pulled away from the experience, is a senior director of program. And we just felt that the program continues to have more and more demands around just staff training to start with, the scheduling of hundreds of children at once moving through our camp. And then we do lots of different things. We used to be a camp that primarily had a 1-month experience. And now throughout the summer, there's lots of different things happening at once. Those 1-month kids are there, but we've also got the short stay programs, the 1 week introductory programs, the 3 days for 5, 6, and 7-year-olds, the program we call Winona. And so our program head really has that year-round responsibility, not just for summer camp, but also along with our director of experience, who happens to be his wife. So that works well. They take on the outdoor education side of things. They're dealing with our schools and community groups and our women's weekend programs, you name it. So we've set up what we believe is a cleaner structure. And then my role is to basically quarterback this. And so I deal with each of the 4 of them independently, and then also kind of collectively. So Monday, for example, coming up, our senior director of operations, our senior director of program, and I have a chunk of time Monday morning. We're going to really walk through everything we're doing around development of property and program for next season. We're reimagining our sailing space, moving it completely on the other side of one of our waterfronts. We're building a new basketball, pickleball court, on it goes, reshingling roofs, you name it. So it doesn't involve the other 2 senior directors. And that's been kind of our goal, is we want to get rid of everybody being involved in everything. So it really falls to me to really play a key role with communication and sort of coordination of that core team of 4. There are many other people involved with us year round, but we're really focusing on those 4 right now and around their jobs. We also went through the RACI exercise, which you may or may not know. You can GTS, Google that stuff and find out more about it. It's a great sort of management tool. So RACI, RACI. It's really going through and delineating responsibilities clearly for everybody in our management structure, in our case. So who's responsible, who's accountable for a function, who's supporting that function, who needs to be consulted, and then who needs to be informed. So responsible, accountable, supporting, consulting, and informed. And we find with some of the work that we do, there may be 9 members of our management group that need to be involved with that initiative, but some of them just want to be informed. A few of them are just 2 or 3 people. We really like this, and we're actually coming back together another 3 weeks to fine tune it. So on January 1st, with the new year, we're really clear on what our responsibilities are and kind of where the buck stops. So that's just some broad strokes of what we're doing in terms of reimagining our crew. Go ahead, Howie,
I find it, well, first of all, Kelly, you know that Jeff and I have known each other for years, and I think what our listeners are been brought in to listen to is a real view of Jeff's sort of intentionality of organizational efficiency. And this is something that is so interesting for all of us as camp owners to hear, because whether you're an operation like we have, where it's, generational and it's family and it's, husband and wife teams, or it's someone like Jeff who has, worked with such close people who now have had to create these wonderful silos of responsibility, because, at the end of the day, and I know some of the personnel that Jeff is referring to in these roles, and these are incredibly capable people who, if you're working with them full time, as Jeff does, it really is important to delineate where everyone begins and ends and what the relationship is like amongst each of those people and the executive director, the owner, etc. So I do deeply appreciate Jeff's, how meticulous Jeff is with those explanations, and it kind of, and I'm wondering, Jeff, how much has the experience of the last 2 years and, this once in a generation experience we've had as camp professionals actually either had you go further with what you've just described to us, or was it something pre-pandemic that you had a vision to do? I'm really curious about sort of where, this experience has influenced where you are at this date and time.
Yeah, it's a great question, Howie. I think we were moving in that direction. We had hired some incredible professionals to work with us in the industry. And so we were just on the cusp of getting ready for the season of 2020 with some fairly significant changes. Then things kind of were put on hold. And as we all know, it was a scramble to run camp this year. It worked, knock on wood everywhere. It was great. There was a ton of tremendous takeaways. We were thrilled. But now we just sort of went, okay, we need to get really back on track. And so that's why there was an urgency this fall to really address what we felt were just the cornerstones of our operation. And so we just thought we get those in place and we can kind of build and build and build on that. For me as the owner as well, in that RACI setup, I'm accountable for everything. And I think for me, it was really great to go do this exercise for a day. We had one of our team, two of our team members, Jane McCutcheon and Tom Appleyard, who many know, facilitated a retreat for us. And I guess for me, what I realized was, right, I can't give everything away. I need to make sure that everybody at least reports back to me, because at the end of the day, I'm the last one standing. So in a really strange way, it just reinforced what I need to do in terms of my own awareness and my own engagement. But at the same time, I don't need to be involved in the minutia of a lot of the things that we're doing. And I'm not a micromanager anyway, so I wasn't. But it really helped me to organize and prioritize, I think, my time moving forward. So I really felt it was a useful experience for me as well.
Yeah.
And then the other thing we've sort of done, which I think we all do as camp professionals, or at least we have good intentions to do it, but we're really holding ourselves accountable now. And it's a simple formula that as we move forward and we have this great new initiative and we want to do this, and we want to evolve this, we're stopping and saying, if we're going to do that, we're taking something away. We're taking something away off of your workload, off of your plate, off of your layers of responsibility. So if you want to pursue this and we want to go this direction, something has to come away, because we just felt we were constantly adding more and more. And we all do that as camp professionals willingly. But I think it's having some effect. We need to be thoughtful about the work-life balance for all of us. So that's also part of our approach and our philosophy now is, that's great. We're going to add, we're talking about, for example, doing some more extended canoe trip programs in the future. Terrific. But we need to take a few things away before we start putting more full-time professional time on this particular initiative. So I think that's being also part of the approach.
For me, first of all, I think, Kelly, we need to, as part of the show notes, put RACI down in the show notes for our listeners, because I think that tool, which I'm familiar with, but haven't really dove into it the way that Jeff has, I think is a great tool for sure. But I'm curious, Kelly, you and I have talked a lot about the role you see for yourself at Hidden Pines, and I'm wondering how much of what Jeff has described through his own exercises sort of, getting you smiling or starting to think about how similar, you've been thinking about the things that you're looking to do at your camp.
Why? Because did you have secret footage of me looking like a chicken with my head cut off at my camp this summer, Howie? I want that footage. I did a lot of smiling and nodding, didn't I? Absolutely. For me, I've sat down with who are now summer directors. We've sat down twice, and we will be meeting with our new middle leadership tier of assistant directors next week. But so much of this resonates with me about what we've been thinking about and talking about of, all right, what are those directors really good at? What are their strengths? And I love when Jeff said, to get rid of everyone being involved with everything. And so not to be just in a silo alone, but to say, okay, Abby, you are director of programming. And Chris, you are a director of early childhood and family experience. And Maddie, you are a director of camper experience. And many things have what they're in charge of, but then also what they're supporting, because it's that Chris and Maddie of my staff are so both good at behavior, but who is that contact for staff, but also who can support and step in. So a lot of this really resonates with me of defining what are for us as directors, executive directors, owners, of looking at our team and what are their strengths and how can we help them develop and shine and grow, but then what things can they take off of their plate, because we definitely had a summer of everybody's involved in everything and we did it, but it needs to be fine-tuned and it needs to be refined so it doesn't feel so hectic.
I wanted to just for a moment this discussion so far, has talked about operationally sort of how we create these efficiencies around, making sure that we as owners, ultimately the buck stops with us in so many ways and so many decisions, but empowering people to feel like they're driving mission forward and that the ideas that are being generated are compatible with the historical things we've done and all these great things. And I love the discussion so far. I know for me at our camp, I'm wondering if we could just for a moment talk about how all these changes can or might affect customer service. And I want to talk from the lens of, when Jeff makes the decision to be the executive director, although everyone knows him as the owner, when Mr. and Mrs. Smith, who spoke to Jeff about sending Johnny to Winona, and now we've created these wonderful efficiencies. I always want to talk about the lens of, when Mrs. Smith calls, does she still have access to Jeff? Does she still have access to Howie and Kelly? Although we know we want to empower our people and and they're super capable. That I thought maybe if we could just for a moment talk about these reorganizational approaches, which I think help us long-term and keep good people with us. I'm wondering if we could talk, maybe Jeff, you could start us off of how much of the customer service lens, especially in those buckets that you described as experience and program and things of that kind, how much did you have to think about, are we still the same camp if someone calls us, or all those things? Does that make sense? Did I frame that
Right,
properly?
yeah, I mean, I can give you a few examples on our end of just how we're sort of working through this. Pre-pandemic, in January of 2020, we had made the decision to attempt to work this new concept of working virtually. And you mentioned Camp Brain, of course, our great friend, including one of my brothers. I talked to folks at Camp Brain, and they were starting to pilot that a little bit. And they told me about this whole new thing called Zoom. And maybe this would be something we could think about. But we were already moving in the direction of working virtually. We were moving in the direction with our staff, our full-time staff, so spread out. It didn't make a lot of sense to drive an hour and a half to come to a central office every day. So we were already doing that. And we knew that part of the challenge of that would be, it wasn't going to be the same ease of saying someone's on hold and the person at the next desk can talk to that person. So we were already starting to work through, what does that look and feel like? So what we've done is we've identified a few key people that do talk to parents. I'm not one of those people. I'm not one of those people that will be, for example, our director of experience is our point person, our senior director of experience, to talk to families. That's the person organizing everything from staff with cabin groups to cabin mates to you name it. So we want it to be that person because they're the most impactful for that child's experience with us. What I had to really struggle with is, what's my role? I've been doing this for my whole life, and in the last 25 years, we started Winona, and I think there's still an expectation that I have, and I think our families have, that I'm going to be really engaged in the experience. That's what I plan on doing. I'm going to be 60 shortly, and I'm not planning on, weird number, but I'm not planning on doing anything. I'm with this forever. But I got to think about where do I fit in our experience? And so part of what I've been doing is re-examining my role with lots of input. And so for now, the kind of working plan is that absolutely I can be involved during the year. We have some partner groups that come to camp, for example. I'm still the first person to work with those groups. I'll be there and really having a key role in all of our staff training and orientation and the build up to summer. I'll be there on all of the key moments and times of the summer, of the openings and closings of each month, both the parents and kids and campers arriving and departing, but also some of the key programs. So we sort of balanced out what makes sense for me to have an upfront sort of key role. In all of our camps that are privately owned, I think we are the consistent presence all the way through as often the owners and the ownership families. So if anything, I feel way better having real clarity around my role next season, in season, during the season, but also during the year as well. I kind of know when I'm going to jump in and out. So we have yet to address what we're doing for, for new camp families en masse. We used to do what we called Welcome to Winona presentations. It's a big hotel ballroom and it's 300 family members, and I'd be up front doing that. We're not sure if we're getting back to that or not, but certainly the on-site open houses, all those kind of things, all have a main and key role with that. So I think we're just trying to take a team approach, so that there's a lot of people that can be, involved in leading camp and representing camp. But at key moments, as the owner and the executive director, I'm front and center as well. And I really like that balance. And I think that's really sustainable moving forward. So we have empowered other people, but we've also been really thoughtful about, in my case, what my role would be.
I know you've been giving this a lot of thought, Kelly, because I know as day camp operators, some of our bread and butter often is sort of that greeting every day, and the way that we do things, in a day camp setting that may be slightly different than in an overnight camp setting. As you think of this creation of your senior director or your summer director model, like how much have you given thought to the things that you still want to be intimately involved with in terms of the profile you've traditionally had at camp? Like, has your team addressed that at this point?
Well, so far the model is that overarching, like Jeff said, kind of that quarterback. But where I'm struggling is I don't have a clear person to be my staff, director of staff experience.
Yeah.
I want to be that. Also because my other three have very clear strengths and they're great where they are. But I know I need to have someone else do it, but I don't necessarily know who that is or what that looks like, or do I try to do it? I don't know. It's those things that will be tricky to work out. The other thing I think for day camps, especially you and I, Howie, is I only have one other person that's here with me year round. All my other senior directors and assistant directors are teachers. And so I think that it will be interesting to see how that plays out, because during the year, it will be myself answering those phone calls and my other year-round person and having that interaction with those families. And then come summer, they'll still want that with me. But then what can I first defer to, one of my senior directors to give that family a call, and I can talk with them prior, or they can pull me in. But what I really want to be more than anything is a next step versus always that person that people go to. So I need to have a couple layers of other people that people can go to besides me. But it will be interesting to see what things we need to rework next fall. I don't know about you, Howie, but I think feels like a big difference to me with the year-round staff that we have versus some overnight camps.
Well, yeah, and as I've mentioned to you, Kelly, and Jeff's aware of this, and I think I've mentioned our previous show, we've just brought on our daughter to work full time, right? Third generation of leadership here at Robin Hood, and already, some of the things that I've quarterbacked, as Jeff put, I've been able to now really give over, and sort of apply to her passions of being in the industry in terms of program and staff development and recruitment, and working together on that. And yes, we don't have a large full-time staff, but at the same time, trying to prioritize what are those things in the off season really need a singular focus, maybe someone other than the owner and the camp director or the ED, and those exercises, I'm sure many of our camps that listen to our program are going through this same exercise, and some of the reorganization, as I mentioned to and asked Jeff, is we went through an exercise like everybody else did about the silver linings of operating in a COVID summer, and what were some of the things we created that we would never have thought of prior to the COVID experience of running camp that are now here to stay, and what are the implications for our organization if we want to keep them. Does it mean hiring someone? Does it mean, an investment, a capital investment in your site to accommodate a new facility that you thought was only going to work during COVID times, but you say to yourself, no, actually, we can use that all the time. So let's do that. So I think that those exercises, as much as it's reorganization of leadership, I'm sure, we can all agree that all this experience over the last couple of years has sort of stemmed this reorganization of facility and structures and just even flow within our operations that I hope we can all look at as a positive thing and not a burden, because we've all, as we are camp people, we tend to, I'd like to think we all see the sunny side in most things if we can. So I'm curious about, just what can come in our own operation here in Toronto related to that stuff as well. Jeff, I think you had a thought you maybe wanted to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump back just for a second. You mentioned earlier just the concept of sort of management silos. And as we're sort of talking through, Kelly, you and I being executive directors and defining what that looks like and figuring out what our role is on site and throughout the year. One thing I've done for a number of years that I really hold on to is something called the Monday Memo. And what I'll do is every Monday morning, as Howie knows, I'm an early riser. So 5 o'clock Monday morning, I'll spend an hour and I'll send out to about 20 of our really core leadership group. Not all full-time by any means. It's our camp doctors in there, our executive chef. They have kind of a summary of things happening in camp life. And it's informed by the work we're doing the week before, things that are coming up, but everybody gets the same message and they get it from me. So back to sort of quarterbacking, part of that also I think is around the messaging and communication and establishing priorities. So I really believe in that. I spent a fair bit of time doing it. It's an open email to populate in my draft folder the week prior. Monday morning, I'll look at it one more time and then I'll send it out. And I just feel like what that allows me to do is still set the tone. We're working again virtually right now, different locations, often taking on, again, the siloed approach of work, but this kind of connects us, as well as having, we have what we call roundup once a week of management meetings. But I feel like this gets the broader leadership of the camp all hearing the same message the same way from one source, which in this case is me. So I really stand by that. That's been really successful for us.
I think, first of all, I think that's an awesome tip for many of us in terms of just keeping our people, in the loop. And, it's hard to stay connected, but I would imagine, Jeff, just the knowing that Jeff is checking in on a regular basis with an update is just has had an incredible impact on sort of everyone feeling continually connected in what you're thinking and maybe and the direction of Winona on a regular basis. I really like that. I'm glad you mentioned that. I think it's
on
awesome.
That group, Howie, our bookkeeper, our accountant are on that group. They're never a camp, but they kind of have a feel for what we're doing, maybe what to expect in terms of development or purchasing or things that are going on. 2 of my 3 daughters are at a point in their lives where they have an interest in sort of the management of camp. They get that as well. So the family's involved that way. Otherwise, they never know what was going on. So I just found it a really useful tool. And as a side note, it's also a great archival piece. So I've got a massive, list. I've done this for 7 or 8 years now. And it's tricky to look back and kind of go, right, that's what we were thinking about doing. I'm going to pull some of that from 2015 and use it again or reimagine it. So I found it really useful from that standpoint as well.
Well, I think it's really interesting that both Jeff and I are trying to pull ourselves out, but in different ways and at different stages, right? Yeah. So I'm going into my 7th year of owning. Jeff's 30, no, how many years?
Well, yeah, I'm directing, this will be, my first year as sort of in a directing role was 1983. So gosh, this was 40 seasons.
Okay.
But at Winona, 25 in terms of ownership. 26 now, actually. 26.
So it's interesting at, 7 years and 26 that we're both trying to pull ourselves out, but it seems probably at different levels. Like I'm trying to pull myself out of the weeds of all the stuff today. And for me, it sounds like you're trying to pull yourself out even a step further to still be overarching, but have even more onus on your director. So that just is sticking out to me as like very different points in our careers, but still trying at different levels and different points to pull ourselves out a little bit. And for you, Howie, too, you're trying to pull yourself out a little bit and pass that on to Jordana.
Yeah. I think it's a bit, it's just redefining, right? The influence we want to have on our operations and I think the influence can look very different at different stages in our careers as we get more established and we and this is a great segue into maybe this last piece we could talk about, and this is the challenge of keeping good staff, right? And I know that I'm happy to share and eager to get your ideas about the level of reorganization that I find myself in is not necessarily around sort of the big leadership pieces within our operation, but is I have those people and they're here to stay for a while. They're teachers, they have kids that come to camp, and we're super grateful and really lucky to have them. But I have, over years, a wonderful layer of new teachers who want to spend their summers at day camp. And our exercise has been, how do we keep them coming back and feeling like they can take on more? So for us, reorganization of our structure is perhaps creating, different layers of responsibility that speak to the mission of camp. And I do believe that our core deliverable, which is not going to be any different than your core deliverable, is the ultimate support of campers and staff, right? And for me, based on this experience we've all had over a year and a half or so, is that I hope it's not too far-fetched a statement to say it's going to be some time before our campers and staff return to us every year without baggage that perhaps pre-pandemic they wouldn't have had to the same extent. And so having said that, we've gone through an exercise where we've tried to define how can we deliver the kind of customer service, supervision, staying on top of the experience, being there to address the mental health issues of our staff, the fact that kids are still, even though thankfully many of them are back in person learning, are still going to come back to us deficient of some of those group dynamic skills that we need. So we've seen an opportunity for us, and wondering how you guys feel about, or what you've done. We've intentionally created another layer of support, so we have more middle management, using the corporate term, supervising smaller chunks of staff and campers so they can be more relevant and more available to them to ensure that nothing is falling by the wayside. I'm wondering, for each of you, how much of that has entered into maybe some other reorganizational approaches that you've seen you have to make at each of your camps?
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point. Yeah, we're certainly taking the approach of divide and conquering more than ever, of creating smaller units, smaller groups, tighter staff supervision, not say more supervisory staff, but more strategically placed supervisory staff. So, we'll have typically a group called resource team members, 28 to 32 likely next year. They're our first year staff group. They're the folks who graduate through our leadership program. I've taken, for example, a role with them in past years. I can't effectively do that as well as I think I can. So we're going to sort of put more energy with a couple of staff likely just devoted to the development and nurturing and mentoring and coaching of our youngest first year, 18, 19-year-old staff. That's a change for us. We're also we've done that exercise of going through what was hard in 2021. And if we're going to do a lot of the same kinds of things, program restructuring back to normal, we hope, there's still a lot of need for a few more staff and a few more key roles. So we have actually elevated the number of key leadership staff for us. There's no question about it. Mm-hmm. We've also, really worked towards having a balance. It wasn't that long ago where we had a 6-month season. A lot of staff would just feel they were just glued to the facility and the site for 6 months. And that's great in some ways. Okay, it's not healthy. And so we've really deliberately been looking at just work-life balance for our staff full-time and year-round, but also during the season. Case in point, a small thing. We've had a Friday focus this fall where all of our full-time team have Fridays off. That's just the balance of what we've had to do during the season, knowing what's coming up. And it's not to say that you then have to do your usual work on a Friday and fit it in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Just the opposite. You're going to work a shorter week with less expectation of time devoted. So it balances out as we get closer to the season. I think a lot of us do this now, but we've also been far more flexible in when staff come to be at camp. We have a big alumni group, Friends of Winona, our FOW community, and a lot of them will come for short stints at camp, and they help to spell off our staff as well in different ways. So we're definitely focusing on that. We're also, the last number of years, being really thoughtful about our nursing team. It used to be you had to come for a month, then you had to come for 2 weeks. And now it's please come for a week, and we'll be far more flexible about your timing, and also giving them breaks. Camp nurses used to stay at camp and you were glued to that health center for 2 weeks or a month. Now we're being far more thoughtful about trying to give them breaks during their time. So it just is on this theme of work-life balance. You mentioned mental health, Howie. This year we made a point of having a mental health professional be attached to camp, away from camp, so available for campers and for staff. And there was a significant amount of interest and engagement with that individual during camp. So it was the phone call, or it was the private Zoom consultation. All of those things play a role in terms of just supporting our staff and kind of enabling them to do the job they love to do and we want them to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's a whole nother podcast episode to talk about, because I've been bringing that up and I talked with people about it at the Staffing Summit, in that being a camp counselor or camp is not it has not historically been a flexible job. And one where we very, very pridefully have been, you're committing to this many weeks, it's full time, day camp world, you have nights and weekends off, but it's blah, blah, blah. And now after, post pandemic, I think we're going to have to look at how can we be flexible and how can we have some work-life balance, and those breaks or time off. It's something that I think we're going to have a little, a little introspection and coming to think about how we can do that. So I think that could be a whole podcast episode, Howie.
Well, I think, Kelly, just to that point, is on the one hand, we are selling the experience to work at our camps more than ever. We're at a place where, as much as the applicant is pitching themselves, I found we're pitching ourselves to them as much as, more than ever. Having said that, if we're espousing our places to be all these things we say they are, but we have this one place of rigidity, and that is time and commitment, and we're not willing to play with that in some kind of way, it's kind of a little contradictory. And so I think all of us have to do a little bit of introspection around the challenges of, recruiting staff, and what concessions do we have to make on our traditional model of, the contract length, or, the things that Jeff is talking about investing in the supports that staff need to unwind or ask good questions or vent, and the outside resourcing we can do. But, I think we have to look at all of those things as part of the big package of what we can do for a young person to because we all know that this is the experience that they all need and should have. And we need to do everything we can to sell it and deliver on what we promise. So these are all really awesome topics for future episodes, for sure. Anything to add to that, Jeff? Because I know that you do such a good job of looking at the whole staff member and trying to deliver that experience for them.
I think for us, sort of two things are really in our focus right now in preparation for next season, as we work with our staff. One is validation, and one is recognition. We think we've done a fairly good job over the years with recognition. That's another podcast, but we do a lot with staff recognition programs and activities and all sorts of things. We think we do that fairly well. Still can improve. But more and more it is for staff members, their time with us being validated, them understanding and appreciating the impact they have, and us taking the time to explain and demonstrate and show and share and communicate around the importance of their work. And I think it's also, from a validation standpoint, it's really listening to our staff when they have comments, recommendations, concerns, that there's a forum for that to happen in the moment. And there's also a forum for that to happen post-camp. We've always had a feedback process with our staff about their recommendations for camp moving forward. This year we took another level and had one-on-one meetings that two of our senior directors have done so far, three of them, with all of our staff. You signed up for a half hour by Zoom, had a chat one-on-one with one of our key management team members and a staff member, it's been a huge success. People have loved it. They've had a bit of time away from camp, and it's one more way they're feeling validated about their opinions and perspective on our experience. And then hopefully if we do a good job, we can communicate and share with them how, based on their input, we are making changes and we are listening and we are hearing what they're saying. Doesn't mean we can do everything they want us to do, but if there's things we can't do, we need to explain why we can't do them. But if there's things we can do and we want to do, we need to also reinforce that they are a part of our experience and their input is incredibly valuable, which it is. So we're really working on that sort of validation, recognition combo moving forward as we plan and execute our 2022 season.
It's so interesting to me, Howie. This is so interesting that all three of us are going through this. And that just this has been a really good topic because I think there is something going on that is the instigator, the motivation for this. And I think it is the needs of campers and staff this summer were so significant that I think many probably camp owners are reflecting on that and trying to figure it out and make adjustments. So this is so interesting. I think that all three of us are going through it in different ways, but really looking at those needs of campers and staff. And it's a constant conversation with yourself and your team about the continuity and the upholding the delivery of what we do and how we do it and how do we adapt to the changes that are happening and how do we keep good people and how do we bring on new good people and how do we grow from within, and all those things are just sort of perpetual themes. And we're having to find more creative and dynamic ways to try to do that. As I said before, Jeff is, Jeff has, really well respected internationally and has been, quite influential in sort of this approach to, the entire operation and the full-time team. And I'm really glad the listeners are getting a sense of the things, how he's evolved over 25 years of camp ownership to see where he now fits into his operation, which at some point we all have to, look at. And it's pretty insightful. In fact, Jeff, one of the things that was really interesting when you talked about the experience, you talked about scheduling. Well, I have an idea. Our sponsor, our other amazing sponsor of the show is Camptivities. And I have to tell you, folks, you end the call and your mind is spinning. Who can do scheduling at our camp? How will you find the time to train those people to do that scheduling? How do you explain all the nuances and details to make sure your schedules come out the right way? The only people who know anything about scheduling are at your camp, and they already have so much on their plate. Well, that's the topic we talked about. Does this mean a lot of late nights each week to get the scheduling done? You may be asking yourself that question, but our friends at Camptivities may be your spot to look to help you with a very important part of your camp operations. So interesting about our friends at Camptivities. They give you the opportunity to do manual adjustments, rainy day scheduling. They have tons of customizable settings. So many reports, 50 plus reports to work with. They're going to save you time. And I can tell you that because I'm a Camptivities user and it's really helped us schedule our day camp here in Toronto. Let Camptivities help you get away from your desk and back out of camp. Think about your organizational continuity and stop relying on one person to make your summer schedules. The team at Camptivities would love to show you the next big thing in camp. Please visit camptivities.com and set up a time to chat. I know you won't be disappointed. All right, Jeff and Howie, we have reached that point in our show where we end with our inspiration. So we are all going to share something that's inspiring us right now. This can be a book, article, podcast, documentary, leadership quote, anything else that's giving us motivation, inspiration to be better camp professionals. So I will start. I'm cheating and I have two, Howie, but I'm going to roll with it because I'm starting off. So my first one, I'm in post-conference mode. I think everyone knows how that feels, where after 2 days of the ACA Staffing Summit, shout out to that team. I thought it was excellent. My mind is just churning with ideas. So I'm kind of in that exhausted, processing, inspired mode. So one thing that the keynote from REI said was, what got you here will not get you there. So thinking about what has worked for us in the past or what got us through 2021 will not get us through 2022. So really thinking different and always continuing to change and do more and evolve. So that's one. The second one is more just on a personal one, but I think it relates to camp is just got done reading the book MAID. And it's about a single mom and her just perseverance and struggled to raise her daughter. And she was homeless and going through the systems and just those systems that are in place that make it really difficult for people to get out of poverty. Great book. It's a Netflix show, but it makes me think about camp and how can we serve families like that? And how can we provide those scholarships and give them camp? Just really reading through how systems really keep them from breaking out of that, but how camp can be a part of maybe breaking out of that for their children. So I would highly recommend that. And that's what I'll share.
That's great. Awesome.
All right, Howie, what about you?
Well, mine is a pretty quick one. I've chosen a quote for this inspiration, and it comes from, the three of us are Northern types. So my reference is based on a hockey legend, the Hockey Hall of Famer legend Mark Messier. Just recently wrote a book on leadership, and there was a quote coming out of the book. I saw an interview with him, and have looked at, picking up the book. But the quote that he shared, I thought was appropriate to much of the discussion we've just had about revisiting our organizational structure and empowering people. And the quote is this: leadership is the liberation of talent. And I really, really love that quote, because I think the three of us and many of the people listening, part of our job as camp leaders is seeing potential in people, giving them opportunity and seeing them grow. And if we can somehow, and I think three of us try as much as we can, we sometimes have to let go a little bit of our ego to allow people to step into roles that we would otherwise either think we can do better, but maybe over time we say, you know what, we've got to have fresh eyes on this or whatever. But generally speaking, Mark Messier's quote of leadership is the liberation of talent, for me, resonates very well with what I'm currently going through and some of the things that I work towards in keeping really good people and keeping them coming back every summer. So Jeff, what are your thoughts?
Those are both great. Thank you. I think for me, I'm always grabbing handfuls of inspiration from so many sources. I love going to conferences. I'm excited to get back to being in person. Read lots over the years, lots of colleagues over the years that have certainly inspired me in lots of ways. But recently, as I mentioned before, we're going through an anniversary season, and it's been a chance for reflection. And so one of the things I've been doing a lot lately has been going back on our own archival information. What were we planning on doing 25 years ago? What was our original business plan for the camp? What were the challenges along the way? And what I found is, I make a ton of notes as I've done this over the last few months, is that there's a place for some real circumspection. There is a place for ongoing consultation, things that we can maybe revisit and really work towards putting back in place or putting in place. And I think really importantly, so many of us are always looking ahead and trying to improve, and there's not always a moment for celebration. And I found myself kind of going, we've done some great things. We've got some things we can be justifiably proud of. I see all the warts all the time of things I want to fix and improve, but I think there's also a moment for celebration. So for me, it is looking internally for a change and really thinking about circumspection and thinking about consultation and thinking really importantly about celebration. And so that's been some inspiration for me lately around just the reading I've been doing.
That's interesting that you say that, Jeff, because one of the keynotes yesterday, Chika Eloy, who was fabulous, he talked about the three cores to a great leadership team is connection, collaboration, and celebration. And I think we need to celebrate. We do a lot of celebration, but I think we need to do even more of celebrating. So it's so interesting that you brought that up.
Yeah, really good. This has been great, Jeff. Thank you. Man, return guest hit a home run, Kelly. I have to tell you, this was really good. Jeff, thank you so much for your insight and all of the great things you're doing at Winona. Kelly, lots of good food for thought for our listeners as we continue to, think about 2022, our staffing, our systems, and, how we're going to, return next summer and be better than ever for sure. Jeff, if people want to get a hold of you, connect with you, say hello, what's the best way to get a hold of you these days?
Yeah, email's great, Howie. It's Jeff, Jeff, at campwinona.com. And Winona is Wenonah. So it's Jeff at campwinona.com.
Amazing. And Kelly?
My email directly, Kelly with a Y at hiddenpinesranch.com.
Amazing. And you can reach me at Howie at camprobinhood.ca, and look forward to connecting with all of our friends who listen to the Camp Owners Podcast. Please don't forget that you can find all of our show notes at gocamp.pro/ownerspod. You can find the resources that we mentioned in this episode and lots of good stuff there from our shows and other Go Camp Pro podcasts out there. We really hope you enjoyed this conversation. I know on behalf of Kelly, we did. Thanks again, Jeff. And thanks for everyone for listening. We look forward to seeing you and sharing our thoughts in the next episode of the Camp Owners Podcast.